Ukrainian Su-27 evades entire Russian air defense network to destroy $120 million command hub. Today, Ukraine delivered a deep strike operation that erased a key Russian command hub valued at $120 million, and the mission depended on a single fighter jet slipping through one of the most layered air defense networks Russia has deployed in the east. A single Su-27 flew a path that forced the Kremlin's radar operators, missile crews, and interceptor pilots into rapid reactions they were not prepared for. The strike demonstrated that discipline failures can break even the strongest defensive architecture, and that terrain, timing, and precision weapons still give Ukraine a chance to penetrate contested skies. To understand how this operation unfolded and how the pilot survived, the story must begin at the very first moment of the mission. At 10 a.m. in eastern Ukraine, the sky was quiet when a lone Ukrainian Su-27 began flying under low clouds without radar emissions. It moved only meters above the terrain, hidden by ground clutter and the natural noise of the landscape. This approach depended on systemic lapses in Russia's early warning network near Kharkiv. Radar crews responsible for maintaining constant surveillance were reportedly distracted by telegram channels, and several monitoring groups confirmed that Russian operators often ignored low-altitude returns because of poor discipline, weak supervision, and exhaustion. When human attention fails, even advanced radar loses reach, and Ukraine used this predictable weakness to shape its safest route of attack. The fighter entered from roughly 100 kilometers away and used terrain masking to stay below the radar horizon. Flying close to the ground allowed the aircraft to blend into forests, low ridges, and river valleys that created natural radar shadows. These features block radar beams and prevent long-range sensors from detecting movement. Ukrainian pilots have used these routes before, and once again, the Su-27 relied on this predictable terrain advantage. Every kilometer flown low delayed the moment when Russian crews would realize a hostile aircraft had entered controlled airspace. As the Su-27 approached the area where Russia's outer detection zone should have reacted, the situation remained unchanged. Russian frontline air defense crews failed to maintain required scanning and reporting cycles. Effective air defense operations depend on switching between wide scans, tracking unusual returns, updating communication logs, and verifying unknown signals. But reports from the sector showed that operators were skipping these tasks. Fatigue from long rotations further reduced vigilance. Senior officers were often absent, leaving inexperienced crews to manage consoles for extended hours. These gaps created an unexpected opening that allowed the Su-27 to pass unnoticed through what should have been one of the strongest early warning perimeters in the region. The aircraft was not invisible. It simply went undetected because the humans monitoring the screens were not performing their duties. This issue has appeared in multiple sectors, where Russian units face constant pressure and poor leadership. Each lapse provides Ukrainian aircraft a chance to advance deeper while staying inside terrain cover. The Su-27's penetration highlighted how declining morale and reduced discipline can weaken an entire warning network that Russia relies on to protect strategic nodes. The silence ended once the fighter crossed into the inner detection zone. Russia's first S-400 battery powered up its 91 N6 radar and acquired the Su-27 far later than protocol demands. The radar detected the jet at roughly 300 kilometers, rather than the longer ranges the system is designed for. This delay reduced reaction time and showed how inconsistent operator performance can degrade even top-tier equipment. After detection, the crew launched a long-range 40 N6E interceptor intended to intercept at high altitude. Its guidance system made constant geometric corrections, predicting where the aircraft would be instead of aiming where it was. The Su-27 pilot reacted by diving sharply back toward extreme low altitude. The approach forced the missile into intermittent signal loss because the terrain cut off a clean line of sight. Rivers, ridges, and narrow valleys created radar shadows that made it difficult for the weapon to refine its path. To Terrain became the main defensive tool because it denied the missile steady updates. The S-400 battery kept pressure on the fighter, but terrain masking imposed intermittent track updates, degrading engagement quality. Russia then attempted a predictive tactic. A second S-400 battery launched a missile into an altitude window where Ukrainian jets typically climb before releasing long-range JDAM-ER bombs. This was a statistical shot, not a direct lock. Russian analysts expected a Ukrainian aircraft to appear there based on previous patterns. The missile scanned for several seconds, but failed to detect the Su-27. It self-destructed according to protocol. Although the missile missed, it forced the Ukrainian pilot to delay his climb, burning more fuel and adding strain to an already dangerous route. The jet pressed deeper, approaching the densest part of the layered network. The medium-range S-300 system formed the next barrier in the layered defense. When the Su-27's radar altimeter emitted its 4.3 GHz signal, it reflected into S-300 tracking beams with unusual clarity. This gave Russian operators a precise altitude and heading snapshot. Once confirmed, the first S-300 battery fired 2 S-300 missiles guided through semi-active command. Operators adjusted the missiles manually, making them harder to defeat. The Su-27 released chaff, generating false returns. One missile chased the decoys and detonated early. The second maintained lock, forcing the pilot into a narrow valley where ridges distorted radar. Fuel burn quickly became a critical concern. The aircraft had already burned more than expected during earlier evasive maneuvers, but the threat intensified when 3 additional S-300 batteries joined the engagement. They launched a ripple of missiles from multiple angles, creating converging intercept corridors. To escape, the pilot pulled the jet into a steep vertical climb. The sudden move broke several tracking beams, causing missiles to lose energy and fail to match the climb. Once outside the central kill zone, the pilot dropped low again to avoid renewed radar acquisition. This escape was successful, but it came at a major cost. The Su-27 had used significant fuel and had little margin remaining. Still, the fighter continued toward the release point. Russia responded by activating its air interception layer. 2 Su-35 fighters appeared from about 150 kilometers away, tracking the Su-27 with their Irbis-E radar. The aircraft closed the distance from a superior altitude, forcing the Ukrainian pilot into predictable defensive lines. The lead Su-35 launched an R-37M missile capable of reaching Mach 6 and adjusting its path 10 times per second through data link updates. The Ukrainian pilot combined chaff, sharp turns, and subtle altitude changes to keep the missile from regaining a perfect lock. But the situation grew more difficult because the Su-27 still needed to climb to roughly 26,827 feet to release the JDAM-ER. Without that climb, the bomb would fall short. Climbing meant reduced maneuvering space and higher risk, yet the pilot held the aircraft steady long enough for the JDAM interface to confirm proper conditions. Once the signal appeared, the weapon dropped free. The JDAM-ER entered a dense jamming zone protected by the Krasukha-4 electronic warfare system. It switched from encrypted GPS M-code to inertial navigation, then regained GPS briefly when interference weakened. Using stored satellite images, rooftop signatures, and structural markers, the bomb identified the correct command building among multiple similar structures. It then entered its steep final dive, pierced reinforced floors, and detonated at depth. The collapse erased Russia's command center and the communications nodes inside it. The destruction caused an operational loss of $120 million, affecting servers, protected rooms, encrypted networks, and core relay stations. Russian units experienced noticeable delays in coordinating artillery, drone launches, and rapid response teams. Backup systems were slower and less reliable, creating friction across the local battle space. The strike also delivered a psychological shock, demonstrating that even heavy jamming could not stop modern Western guidance systems when used with terrain masking and precise timing. After releasing the bomb, the Su-27 had to escape with visible battle damage. Fragments from an R-37M detonation had punctured the aircraft's skin, damaged minor internal lines, and created an aerodynamic imbalance. The pilot dropped to about 100 feet above ground to avoid radar detection. Flying this low required constant corrections because even small terrain rises could end the mission instantly. Fuel levels were critically low, only enough for a single attempt to reach home. The jet moved through the shallow valleys and riverbeds, maintaining minimal power to conserve fuel. Ukrainian controllers tracked silently, avoiding transmissions that Russian units could intercept. As the Su-27 neared friendly territory, the remaining fuel reached reserve levels. The pilot reduced the throttle again, stretching the last kilometers. Crossing into Ukrainian airspace marked the first moment he could be certain Russian fighters would not pursue. The landing gear deployed despite the damage, and the aircraft recovered to base, where ground crews conducted immediate post-flight checks. The mission achieved its objective. Ukraine had penetrated 3 layers of Russian air defenses, survived interception attempts, delivered a high-precision strike, and returned the aircraft with minimal damage. The destruction of the command center caused a temporary breakdown in Russian command and control on the Kharkiv axis, and highlighted Russia's growing difficulty maintaining discipline inside its radar stations. It also reinforced Ukraine's confidence in combining low-altitude routes with precision glide weapons. Russia is expected to tighten its procedures, add more low-altitude radar coverage, and deploy additional Su-35 fighters to reduce future gaps. Ukraine is likely to continue targeting command hubs and transport nodes along the Kharkiv-Kupiansk-Oskil axis that support Russian ground operations. The strike delivered a strategic setback for Russia, and the damage, estimated at about $120 million in total impact, raises questions about how effectively Moscow can protect its command architecture under continuous pressure. Will Russia reinforce its defenses fast enough, or will Ukraine exploit these weaknesses in the next phase of the conflict?